gosh, I had grown up in this company. I started with this company when I was 18 years old and grew up within the organization and then got to that point of I made it. I had the title and I had the salary and I did the thing and then realized that's not actually what I really needed to be fulfilled. So I feel like that's where really true burnout comes from is when you're out of alignment with really living for something that you're so passionate for that it's driving you. And I was just burnt to a crisp. I was going to all the different specialists, trying to figure out why I had all these weird symptoms in my body, experiencing double vision and just crazy stuff, even tooth pain. And I went to all these specialists and they'd say, "Nope, you're just stressed out. You're just stressed."
Welcome to the Defining Moments podcast, where leaders, innovators, and everyday heroes share the moments that changed everything. These are the stories behind resilience, purpose, and legacy. Now, let's dive into today's defining moment.
Hi, everyone. It's Melanie Warner here with Defining Moments and host of the Defining Moments podcast and TV show. Today, we have a special guest for you. Now, on paper, she had everything, the title, the salary, the success that most people spend their lives chasing. But behind the scenes, her body was breaking down. Her identity was slipping away, and the life that she had built no longer felt like hers. So she made a decision that most people never would. And you're going to hear about that in just a minute. So this is the show, Defining Moments, where we uncover the decisions that change everything. Not the highlight reel, not the version people post online, not the fake book story, but the moment when staying the same becomes more painful than changing. And what happens during those defining moments? I am Melanie Warner, the host of Defining Moments, our podcast and TV show. And this is where we chat with authors, experts, corporate leaders, high-level coaches, and people who are turning their expertise into best-selling books, premium brands, and powerful media platforms. This episode is brought to you by Defining Moments Press. We are a US-based publishing company, and we help aspiring authors around the world to write, publish, and promote a nonfiction book to elevate their expertise, their brand, and create a meaningful impact and create profit in 8 weeks or less. An example of how we did this was with one of our clients. Her name is Marina Bilasova from Germany. She was a relationship expert, a hypnotherapist. She found herself stuck in a toxic relationship, feeling imposter syndrome. How could she help someone else navigate their own if her own personal life was crumbling? So she came in, wrote a book about it, became an international best-selling author. The book was called Loving Without Losing Yourself, and now she has spoken all over the world, including at the United Nations and so many other amazing places. So these are just examples of some of the things that we can help people do. So I want to jump into today's show. Our guest today is Anna Girgan. Anna, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. We've been talking about this for a while. I'm so excited that you're here today. I know there's so much for us to hop into. Now, Anna, you guys, Anna helps successful women realign their identity so that they can create confident, aligned growth without the pressure and burnout that so often comes with success. Because don't you feel like you have to choose, right? I know as a woman, sometimes I feel like I'm not enough. And then there's other times I feel like I'm just too much, right?
Yeah. Yep. 100%.
And now, Anna, your work didn't come from just theory. It came from a moment where everything you had built stopped working. And after 20 years in corporate, you walked away from your career, not for another job, but for a healing journey that would completely redefine your life. So let's go back to that moment. You had the career, you had the title, you had the income, and on paper, everything looked successful. What was actually happening behind the scenes?
Oh my gosh. I had grown up in this company. I started with this company when I was 18 years old and grew up within the organization and then got to that point of I made it. I had the title and I had the salary and I did the thing and then realized that's not actually what I really needed to be fulfilled. So I feel like that's where really true burnout comes from is when you're out of alignment with really living for something that you're so passionate for that it's driving you. And I was just burnt to a crisp. I was going to all the different specialists, trying to figure out why I had all these weird symptoms in my body, experiencing double vision and just crazy stuff, even tooth pain. And I went to all these specialists and they'd say, "Nope, you're just stressed out. You're just stressed." And I'm like, "How is this possible? I think I'm fine. I'm fine." But I wasn't fine because I was living completely out of alignment with my true purpose and passion. So,
So you talk about how you could feel it in your body. And I know so many people, they feel symptoms, they get frustrated, they go to the doctor, and the doctor says, "Oh, it's just in your head," or "Just take this pill and, and get back to me next week." And you
mhm.
knew it was something beyond that. And you thought it was just stress. And then you ended up in the ER.
I did.
So
Yeah.
what did that moment make undeniable for you?
Oh my gosh. It was your body's gonna scream when you're not paying attention, right? And so I went to the ER thinking, I think I'm having a stroke. My whole body was just numb and tingling and everything. And it ended up being a panic attack. Not me. I don't get panic attacks, right? And so it became undeniable that if I am pushing myself beyond the point that my body is literally screaming for help now, I cannot continue to live out of alignment and try to continue persevering through saying, "This is fine." It's that famous meme where there's the cartoon dog sitting in the kitchen, it's burning down around him, and he's like, "This is fine. Everything's fine." It was like I had to realize that that's really how I was operating in life for quite a while at that point. So,
I remember seeing a t-shirt that I loved, and it was like a shark bite. It was like somebody, and they were literally bleeding out, and it was like, "I'm fine."
yes, exactly.
I think that those two words are probably the biggest lie in the English language, because nobody's just fine. Either you're fantastic or your life is falling apart. And I think that we will tell ourselves, "I'm okay, I'm fine," as a way to cope, to just take a breath and keep going, because that's what we're determined to do as human beings. We're supposed to just go and keep doing and doing and doing until the wheels fall off.
Mhm.
And there's always a point before the breaking point. So, what were the signs that you were ignoring?
The signs that I was ignoring were probably what I was saying about the feeling misaligned and knowing I had these other passions. I had these big, huge dreams of I want to be on stages and I want to be writing books and I want to be doing these things. But I had to hush all of that and push it aside and pretend like maybe one day I'll get there eventually. But that gets louder and louder and louder, I feel. And so it became, I think that was part of my like awakening experience was, okay, I can no longer continue to ignore the fact that there's these dreams that I have and these things that I have inside of me that are begging for attention, begging for me to actually pursue them. And I can't continue giving all of myself to a career that's paying my bills and making me really comfortable financially, but not satisfying me from a purpose driven perspective or an emotional or a spiritual perspective at all. So it was really, realizing how much I was fragmenting myself. That was a huge realization of I have to show up in a certain way at these corporate meetings and for these corporate events that's not true to who I am because I can't be my full authentic self in every room. And eventually that starts wearing you down when you have to show up one way in one group and one way for another. It just doesn't, it's not sustainable.
Yeah, it's like a little piece of your soul is dying every time, because you know this isn't you, and you're wearing this mask to try to, be the right employee and have the right
Mhm.
mindset and be a good team player and all the things that you hear about in corporate America. And God forbid if you already feel this pressure of trying to represent womanhood in the workplace, and then God forbid you have a bad day, or a moment where, um, something doesn't align the way you want it to, or even call in sick. And any vulnerability feels like weakness in that environment. So
Mm. Yep, absolutely.
most people describe it as burnout. What did that actually look like in your day-to-day life? And what happened when everything just kind of fell apart? Like, what was that moment like for you?
Yeah, I would say in my day-to-day life, it looked like calling my best friend on the way to work, saying, "This is it. This is the last, this I'm gonna do it soon. This is the last year. I'm gonna submit my resignation. I know you're so sick of hearing me say this and not following through. I'm sick of myself too, but it's happening." So it looked like that. It looked like clocking out at night and being so completely fried that you're just laying on the couch, doom scrolling on your phone and having the TV on in the background because you can't really ever fully relax. Like your nervous system being so on edge all the time. Those are two big ones. Journaling every Sunday. Like if I still have the Sunday scaries next year, I'm definitely quitting this job. Like those types of things. And also, I think some people could probably relate to certain like Teams rings and alarms going off that would be like so triggering because you're just nonstop with the emails and the text messages and the chasing after fires and feeling like that's part of your purpose. So you feel like you need to bend over backwards in order to make things happen. And the reality is that the show goes on without you. So we should take our time and take time for ourselves before it hits that point of just total and complete burnout.
So you didn't actually leave for another job. You left with no plan. What was the real fear in that moment?
Oh my gosh.
Not the logical one, but the emotional fear.
Yeah. You know, the fear didn't hit me initially because I genuinely felt God call me to go on an adventure. Like it was initially excitement. It was, I'm doing this. Like I'm really going to check this off my bucket list and live this dream and go on this solo road trip adventure. And this is going to be so amazing. And so my palms were sweaty when I sent my resignation letter, but I was excited. But then when I walked out, and then maybe I want to say a week later, I'm like, okay, what did I do? I have no place to live and coming in a month from now, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. I have no idea what I just did. I'm going to go to Starbucks and I'm going to go get a venti drink that's going to make me feel better. And then I'm like, I can't go spend $10 on Starbucks. I don't even have a job anymore. Like, what am I doing? So that was really the fear that came in was, okay, it was the reality of like after you jump out of the plane going, oh my God, is the parachute, is it going to open? Like, am I actually going to be able to survive this?
Wow. Now, you also said you were negotiating with God about going back to work in 6 weeks.
Yes.
What did that season of not knowing teach you?
Oh, wow. Yeah, it was all I knew was work. I had worked my whole life. So I felt like 6 weeks was going to be a really nice amount of time. And I told God, okay, I'm going to give it 6 weeks and then I'm going to really hit the ground running and go after my coaching clients and everything else. And I felt so strong in my spirit. God said, no, it's going to be a lot longer than 6 weeks, Anna. And that was so uncomfortable because all I knew was to be a hard worker, an achiever, an award winner. And so that time period taught me a few things. It taught me how to be a human being and not a human doing, of knowing how to just be able to find value in being and not performing and achieving. And how to trust God. Oh my gosh. Like when you go from 20 years of a stable paycheck to, I don't know when my next check is coming in and how I'm going to pay my bills, that's a whole other level of faith and trust and pushing into my mindset of abundance. I always had an abundant mindset and a mindset of generosity, and it's going to come back to me and I'm going to be taken care of. That was definitely a way that it needed to be tested. Like that, if you want to talk about testing, not having any income coming in and leaning into that mindset at the same time was the greatest test. So,
So there was this adjustment of, for so long, tying value to performance,
mhm,
right? And that was so deeply wired into who you were.
mhm.
If somebody had taken that title away before that moment, Who who were you without that title?
I had no idea. I had no idea. My identity was completely wrapped up in performance and in my job. And also, as we'll probably talk about soon, as in being a daughter, my mom was my best friend. Like those things were associated, my entire identity was associated in performing and showing up and winning the awards and achieving the things. And so, if you had taken that away from me, like I took it away from myself and it was hard enough. So I can't imagine if it was not voluntary.
Yeah. I mean, and they often say that men define who they are by what they do, and women define who they are by who they're with, right?
Hmm.
But I've always identified with doing and being successful because I became like a single mom, and I was the breadwinner. Even when I was married, I was kind of like the driving force of our family of trying of just like being very ambitious and driven, things like that. So it was really it was difficult for me when I had a company that I had to shut down because I felt like that was my identity and that I was letting so many people down who loved that company, and or like the people that worked there. So that was really tough too. And I understand, it's different when you leave a job because you're leaving those people behind and they're miserable. And you're now living this freedom in this life, and they're looking at you and they're jealous of like your freedom, and
Yeah.
you're looking at them and you're like, they still have security and they don't even know what they have and how good they have it. And it's often said that, there are two doors in life. And if you pick one, you give up the other. So if you choose freedom, you give up stability. If you choose stability, you're giving up freedom. And what you built and curated was a life that looks very different today than where you were then. So tell us about that journey. Now, you ended up leaving the job. You had your body was giving you signs. You ended up in the ER. You were having a panic attack. You're like, I can't keep going on this route. And then you mentioned you went on a road trip. So
Yes.
how did all of that lead to where you are today?
Yes, thank you. So it was crazy because I lost my dad in 2015. My mom moved down to Texas and we were roommates. So we were best friends and roomies for a few years. I give my resignation at this job, which was the only job I had ever known in my whole life. And the next week, my mom comes to me and tells me that she needs to go see an oncologist. So my
Oh,
whole
no.
entire world is flipped on its head. And I had already had this plan that I knew was a divine guidance. Like I knew it was God telling me to go on this road trip. So as much as it felt like, is this selfish to still pursue this and do this? Mom was like, you need to do the road trip. You need to go. God already knew like what was going to happen when he gave you this direction. Go. So I did. And so I'm on my road trip and I'm experiencing the most incredible healing journey. Like when my nervous system is healing, my spiritual life is healing, I'm able to finally start hearing God for the first time in so long because my head wasn't completely cluttered and overwhelmed with all the junk of the day to day. And my mom's going through treatment and she's getting better and things are good until they weren't. And she took a turn for the worse. So it was this whole mixed dynamic of I'm healing, my body's healing, my nervous system is healing, I'm getting closer to God, I'm learning more about myself and who I am and finding myself again. And then also this mixed dynamic of then mom, I end up ultimately losing my mom in the journey.
Mm,
So it was
sorry.
incredible. Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
and I mean the irony of like you leaving that job because your body was trying to tell you something that you
Mhm,
couldn't see, and then being able to have that time with your mom that was so incredibly valuable that you didn't
yes.
know was coming for
Mhm,
her being diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and then you were able to be there for her.
mhm.
If you hadn't made that decision to step away, what do you think that would have cost you?
I honestly don't know how I would have survived. I feel like my losing my mom would have been my last straw because my nervous system was already on the fringe. And my mom was my person, and it almost feels like the journey was an emotional healing preparation for the bigger loss that I was about to experience in order
Mhm.
to even give me like a stable foundation to be able to bear the weight of that grief too. So if I hadn't had walked away from it, oh my gosh, I would have still been in a state of complete burnout, nervous system overwhelm, and then suffer the ultimate loss of my life after that.
Yeah.
I honestly, Melanie, don't know how I would have handled that. I had just lost my brother 2 years before that and my dad a few years before. So it was a culmination of so much loss and grief that I think I probably would have just went into complete overwhelm at that point.
Wow. I can't even imagine that much grief from so many immediate family members and like that feeling of isolation. I can only imagine. And then to have, the irony of you're finally healing and getting better, and then your mom's getting worse, but yet you were able to be there for her because you listened to those signs and you took care of yourself, and that ultimately helped you be there for her.
Mhm.
So, thank you for being there for your mom. I know there's a lot of people that have guilt about that because they have to work and they
Mhm.
can't be there for their loved ones, their family members that are sick and taking care of them. And I
Yeah.
think sometimes, life forces us to slow down before something bigger breaks. And these are the signs that we need to look for. And sometimes they're subtle. And if we ignore them, then it gets to be bigger. And, first it's like maybe a pebble against the window, and then maybe it's a brick. And then before you know it, it's like a truck running through your living room. Like it's something
Mhm.
has to stop and get our attention because we get so focused on just doing the things that are comfortable to us.
Yeah.
And so, you also mentioned in your own healing journey that you went to several specialists, like vision issues, neuropathy, pain, and they all said that it was stress,
Yes.
you
Yes.
know,
Yes.
and you were literally living on caffeine.
Mhm.
It was like
Yep.
caffeine to get through the day and wine at night.
Yep.
And what had to change, not just for discipline, but for survival?
Yeah, we completely neglect our bodies in these states, right? Like taking care of ourselves and our internal, even our physical health is so important to our emotional health and everything else, but it's the thing that we end up completely putting to the wayside. So I will say that that was a whole other part of the journey after I lost my mom when I'm in the dark night of the soul season, I leaned into physical health for just honestly survival at that point too. But what had to change was starting to take care and pay attention to what I'm eating, what I'm putting in my body, how I'm taking care, making sure I'm exercising, all of these things. We can't divorce ourselves from body, soul, spirit. It all is connected. So I had to start taking care of my physical health in order for my emotional health and my spiritual health in order for that to be healthy overall.
So you talk about going from, 60 hours a week of working to
Hmm.
just learning how to just be still. What was the hardest thing about slowing down?
Oh my
Because I
gosh.
know I'm the same way. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't even meditate. Somebody told me the other day, I want to give you a free 90-minute meditation thing. And I was literally like, that gives me anxiety.
Yes, I'll never forget when I first, for months after I quit, I was making up to-do lists, like literally faking to-do lists. Like, I think I should probably have to do these things today just because I need to feel like I've got purpose and things to accomplish, which, okay, there's something to be said for having purpose. But when you are literally creating tasks for yourself to stay busy in order to feel useful in life, there's something that was definitely still misaligned. That took me a long time to unpack. And that is really being able to sit with yourself and be comfortable sitting with, and like you said, meditation. Like if we're never quiet, if we're never able to just really sit and breathe, we're never able to really tap in, really hear God's voice, our own inner thoughts. There's a part of your brain that's actually only activated when you hit a state of boredom, and it's the most creative, innovative part of your brain. So we're never bored and we're always keeping ourselves go, 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 busy, busy, busy on our phones, scrolling, looking at, we're never able to actually be our most creative, innovative, best selves. So
Yeah. It's that
that was a
dopamine,
process.
that dopamine hit when you're scrolling through and you're bored. I mean, think about how many times you watch a movie or a TV show and you're on your phone because you can't even engage in being entertained, God forbid. And I
Yep.
think it's only going to get worse because as we get universal income that starts to get rid of the financial stress that a lot of people feel in multiple countries around the world, as healthcare has evolved and people won't be getting sick like they used to, then the only hardship that people will start having in life. I mean, think about in the last 100 years, I mean, the quality of life has gotten way better for everybody around the world. And we're
Mhm.
solving a lot of these issues like hunger and survival and all these things. And pretty soon, the only hardship is going to be losing somebody to grief. And that
Mhm.
mental health crisis of how do we how do we function when everything else seems to be going okay, then we have nothing to compare the bad stuff to, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's where, and you start looking at statistics over the next few years, even the next 5 to 10 years, that mental health is going to surpass all the other physical challenges that people have and become the number one biggest threat to humanity, which I could not believe when I started seeing those statistics. I was in Dubai in December and started looking at what they were researching and scientific evidence towards that for the next 40 years, all the way to the year 2070, that mental health will be this long outstanding problem that we struggle with as human beings. And
Mm.
so I think anybody in that space is there's always going to be a demand for being able to help people navigate those tools, whether it's grief, because if grief is not processed properly, it will continue to be there for years and years and years,
Mhm.
and it turns into a deep depression.
Yes.
So you must
Yeah.
have learned something along this journey to work through all of this hard, raw grief that you were dealing with, losing your brother, your dad, your mom. I can't even imagine.
Mhm.
And then now you're in a stage where you teach women that they can create success without stress, that they can take that pain and turn it into purpose. So, what does that actually look like in practice?
Yeah, I think it always comes down to choices, right? You always have a decision, you always have a choice. And when you're in that state of feeling like you just have your life burned down, whether it's from the loss of a loved one or the loss of a job or just any really big transition in your life, you can feel like you're in that state of ashes and you have to know that you have a choice and you can make a decision if you're going to stay there or if you're going to be that phoenix and rise up and make it turn those ashes into something that can be your most creative, your most beautiful, your most constructive season coming from pain, right? And taking the pain and making it into something that is valuable. And it's not about discounting the pain and it's not about ignoring it, right? Like you said, you can't just stuff it down or bury it because it's going to stay there. You have to acknowledge the pain. There is so many times that I have screamed and cried and punched pillows to process through the things that I've experienced and acknowledge the things that I've experienced and how horrible some of it has been. But through it all, realizing that I have a decision to make on how I'm going to move forward here. And I have a choice to make that I'm going to push forward, push on, and look up and forward into what I can create for my life, as opposed to sitting in that and staying there.
Well, I think that there's a lot of people listening that may feel like they're stuck.
Hmm.
They may recognize these pain points that you had and say, wait a second, I have blurred vision. I feel numb. I have these same challenges. What advice would you give to somebody who's watching or listening today that is resonating with this, but maybe they're stuck in a job or a life, a relationship, something that they feel stuck, that they know they don't want, but they don't know how to get out of it?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I have so much compassion for that because I've been there in so many different avenues and areas of life. That stuckness is actually a literal physical representation of being in a really low energetic state. So I'm a core energy coach. I know I studied energy and frequencies and all of those things. And when you're in a really low energetic state, you feel stuck. You feel like you're powerless. You feel like you can't take control. The reality is, it has to start with realizing that you do have a choice. You always have choices. It might not even be the choice that you want, but you always have a choice to make some decision to push yourself forward. And if you think about it from an energetic perspective, even like we were talking about with the physical health, how can you move yourself into a healthier state, in a higher energy state, in a more productive energy state in order to even enable you to get out of that place of feeling stuck? Because you're not really stuck. It's mental, it's a mindset, it's a feeling, but it's not reality. The reality is that we're always empowered with choices.
And I think the thing that's missing for a lot of people is the tools, right? Like I remember thinking about this in my own life when everything fell apart. You know, I went through bankruptcy and divorce and foreclosure and tax audits, and I lost my son. So I got stuck in that grief mode that kind of triggered a lot of other loss because I just couldn't function.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, okay, if something's broken in my house, like my plumbing, I call a plumber. If it's my electricity, I call an electrician. But I couldn't quite figure out what was broken in my life. I just remember going, I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not a drug addict. Like, why is my life falling apart? And I remember being so hard on myself and kept saying, what's wrong with me? And I could not pinpoint what the issue was. You know what I mean? And so I often say that a good coach or a mentor is almost like a handyman for your life. You know, like we all could use um, that guidance. And it's not just to like, you know, cut back on the Chardonnay or lose a few pounds or find Mr. or Mrs. Right. You know, it's really like those are surface level things that may be hiding the true symptoms behind the pain. Right.
Mhm.
So, what are some of the things you do to help people get to the root of that pain? Are there
Yeah.
tools that you can help people, you know, like introduce people to that they can really identify the root of that pain so they can then resolve it?
Yeah, I love that. The first thing, too, I want to just mention, you talked about how we're going to be in this mental health crisis. And I believe that a lot of that comes from isolation. And we're so isolated, we're so pigeonholed. A lot of us are working from home and not interacting with other humans and using ChatGPT as our new best friend and our therapist. And what it's doing, it feels good in the moment, but it's actually isolating us.
Hmm.
So I think first and foremost, it's realizing that we need each other. We need other people. We need community. We need to be surrounded. And having a coach or a mentor, you even ChatGPT is just an echo chamber. It's just telling you what
Mm,
you want to hear, you know?
that's true. That's
You need
true.
to have somebody that's able to ask the right questions and excavate the things out of you that really are your big aha moments or epiphanies to what it is that's truly holding you back. So I do start every one-on-one interaction with a client with my energy assessment, which is through the coaching certification I have is IPEC. So we have an energy assessment. And this is literally an assessment that's going to mirror back all of your what basically where your frequencies are right now. And the cool thing about it is, unlike other like personality profile tests that are really identity driven, this is attitudinal. So it's a snapshot of where you are right now. And then from that assessment, we can see, okay, here's where your energy is. And in a 90-minute debrief, pull out so much of what's driving that, what's driving your stressors, what's driving your stress responses, what's driving some of those feelings of stuckness or overwhelm, and then come up with tools and things to help push forward. And through obviously coaching would come then even more epiphanies and breakthroughs so that you can really excavate all those answers. because you have all the answers inside of yourself. It's just having someone that's skilled, that's able to help you pull them out.
That's a good point. And I find that most people, when they're going through a journey, they're seeking something, they shouldn't do it alone, right? Like we always tell people, don't try this at home, you can get burned, right? So it's like having a guide and somebody who's literally walked through this battlefield and knows where, all the mines are buried and you can literally walk in their footsteps. So I'm a big fan of mentorship and having somebody who's been through it and can show you what that looks like. And it just cuts that time in half. And there's a new currency out there that we talk about in this what's called the trust recession that we're in.
Mhm.
And there's also one called an isolation tax, right? Like,
Mm,
what's the price you're paying to figure things out on your own, right? Or what is the cost of trying to be alone and hide these things and not be honest and act like everything's fine and say, I'm fine. And in the meantime, everything's falling apart and you're just sticking your head in the sand and pretending it's not happening, which is not healthy. And so many of us, that's how we deal with bad things, right? We self-medicate
mhm.
through wine or drugs or pills or sleeping pills or some things to just not feel so that we numb ourselves and we
Yeah.
ignore the signs and until it takes much more a profound experience to finally, wake us up to realize something is happening. And I think that's just kind of even the American way. Like we're just so hunky dory all the time, like we're going to pretend everything's great when it's not. And we don't talk about the things when they aren't working because we
Yeah.
want everything to just be fine. And so I think that's the biggest thing is that assessment and to become aware, because the first step towards making a real change in life is the admission that there is something wrong, and then assessing where are you and where do you want to go? Because then
Yes.
it's much easier. It's like saying, I want to take a vacation. Well, where do you want to go? I don't know. Well, how are you going to know what hotel and what airline? Like, you got to pick a destination first. And then these tools can help you get there faster, like a
Mhm.
vehicle to get you there faster.
Yeah.
And so, you talk about alignment, you talk about how it doesn't have to be this huge effort to feel alignment. Where do
Mhm.
you think that message often gets misunderstood?
Of feeling misaligned. I
Yes.
think it comes from society, and we all are adopting to who we think we should be, or how we should be showing up, or the titles that people give us, or how we need to be acting. And I think people pleasing for a lot of women shows up really big. But I think just society tells you, and even especially, I believe it's mostly an American culture thing with the performance and the asking, what do you do, being the first question that you ask someone. Well, then that's associated with your identity of the job that you're doing. So then if you're constantly forming yourself into this thing that people are expecting of you and how you think you need to show up and how you need to show up to be valued or accepted, somewhere along the lines you start to lose track of, like, wait a second, who is it that I wanted to be? Who is it that, like, what does my heart really say? What are my passions and my desires? And who did God call me to be? Not what everybody else around me is dictating I should be or am supposed to be. And again, especially I think with now more than ever, with us being on social media and consuming other people's lives at this insane degree it's never in existence been like this before, then the comparison is there, and the looking at everybody else's life thinking I need to be more like this and more like them and more like that, and just completely losing sight of who it is that you were born to be. Like, you go anywhere and everybody's just like this, scrolling their phones, stuck to a screen, absorbing, consuming, consuming, consuming. I think it's time for us to stop consuming and start creating. And out of that creation is more of coming out of who you were supposed to put on this earth to be?
That's a really good point. I mean, if you think about it, the term consumer was created to consume things. Like,
Yeah.
it fueled our entire economy by people buying a bunch of stuff they didn't want or need and then paying for storage on top of that, and there's just this huge waste of like time and energy and money. And I think there's a lot of people, I know I was one of them for sure for years, where I noticed if I had extra time or extra money, I would squander it.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, because I didn't have a plan. And if I had a plan, I would feel like, well, then I'm in a routine and I don't want to be in a routine. So there was like this was resistance to having, structure in my life and wanting to be spontaneous and fun and taking vacations to escape from life instead of like really facing things. And I think that there's different ways that people avoid their pain.
Hmm.
What would you say is the biggest lie that high achieving women believe about success?
Oh my gosh, the biggest lie that high achieving women believe about success. Yeah, it's that your value, your inherent personal value is associated with a title or a degree or a paycheck. I think that that's probably the biggest one of I have to strive to become and to do and to achieve and to perform. And at the end of the day, especially after experiencing so much loss, it really gives you a different perspective of what really matters, what really is going to matter when you're 80 years old and you are looking back at your life. Is it going to be how many zeros you had on your paycheck or how many awards you won? Or is it going to be the value that you find in relationship and love and community and creation and those types of things that really light you up and give you a lot of purpose, I think is probably the biggest one.
And that's something that you can help people with.
Yes. Yes.
So why do so many women stay stuck in what you call the golden handcuffs?
Oh my gosh, because it's so scary to let go of the thing that you feel like you worked so hard to achieve. And because that stability, it feels like stability. It feels like, oh, well, I have a regular paycheck. I have health insurance. I have these things. But is stability really stable if you're completely losing yourself in the process? So you opened the podcast with the pain of change has to become less than the pain of staying the same. And that's really what it's all about is the golden handcuffs are just not quite painful enough to get you to that place. You have to have that awareness and that eye-opening experience of just saying, you know what? I know that I'm made for more. I know that I'm meant for more. I know that there has to be more to life than this. And I hope, and my goal is to get women to that point of choosing themselves without having to experience what I experienced and the things that you've experienced with experiencing this great loss in life, of having that be, okay, well, then once you experience that level of loss, you realize that you might as well go after the dream and chase the thing and do the thing that you want to do. So let's get there before it comes to that critical juncture or retirement or your 80th birthday of saying, okay, let's unleash these golden handcuffs. That stability is not actually stability. That paycheck isn't actually bringing you joy and happiness and fulfillment. And let's step you into a life that's wholly fulfilling and wholly joyful and not just what you think you needed to work for to achieve.
Yeah, I love that because I think so many people they shrink their dreams to fit their income
Hmm.
and then have this resentment for the job. And I always like to tell people, working for yourself, if you're making several hundred thousand a year working for somebody, then they've invested a lot in your knowledge. Like I have a friend that worked for 32 years in one of the top 5 companies in the world, was a major corporate executive, and they paid him several hundred thousand dollars, but they invested over $1 billion in his brain. A
Mm.
billion. And he had to
Wow.
manage 1,000 people. That was a lot of people to manage. A lot of, like, he had to sleep on a cot and wake up every 3 hours because there was drama going on somewhere in the world. And he never had a life outside of there. And then it caused him to go through a late in life divorce. But he
Mm.
was a very stable, loyal person who had so much certainty. And then, goes into this space of like, what I'm not used to having uncertainty in my life. And I think that there's a lot of people who think that way. And then what happened is I was like, no, your knowledge is worth something. People are willing to pay you for it. And it's the same thing. If you work for somebody else, it's like the difference between renting and owning. If you are renting a house instead of owning, because you think you can't afford it, it's like what makes you think you can pay your landlord's house payment and not your own? Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just a mindset shift. And so, congratulations on taking that leap. Just like my friend did. He finally left, he retired early, and then he was able to go get a contract with Amazon for like eight or $900,000 in 1 year using the same brain, the same skills that he did for a job, but now working for himself, getting
Yes.
3 times as much. And this is the thing that I like to celebrate,
Mhm.
where they say 97% of people work for 3% of America. And I would much rather change those statistics, right?
Mhm.
Because that is, when you can create offers and ideas and a business from a service or from your own skill set, and you can monetize, but also help other people solve a pain point in their life, that
Mhm.
is what sets you free. Because
Yes.
now you can choose freedom and security. You don't have to choose between those two doors when you do work for yourself and create value and helping other people get through their own stuff, and you've been able to do that. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. And something else too, you just brought to mind. I'm so excited for him. That's amazing. I always love these transformational business shows like Restaurant Impossible and Bar Rescue and all of those, like going in and just completely flipping businesses. And in my corporate job, I'd watch those shows and be like, well, that looks fun, but I have no idea how I would get there. And it took me going through this process and creating the space and everything else to now I'm consulting for businesses too. So I was able to take the leap, do the thing, separate myself, and then now I'm able to actually step in and help retail organizations revive, transform themselves, but still be my own boss, my own control my own schedule, my own life, my own freedom. And so thank you so much because you just actually reminded me of I would have never been able to do this if I hadn't taken that initial very scary, very risky leap into believing in myself and just going
Can,
after the dream.
can you do me a favor? Your
Yeah.
video was cutting out there for a
Oh,
second. Is there
yeah.
any way you can repeat what you just said? Because I think it was so
Sure.
powerful and I want to
Yeah,
make
yeah.
sure everybody got to hear it.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I was thank you so much for bringing that back and saying that you just really brought something else back to my memory or just realization that now I'm actually also consulting for businesses. And I love the shows of Restaurant Impossible and Bar Rescue where they go into these businesses and transform them in this record-breaking time. And I've always loved that and been, how do I do that? How do I get there? And now I'm doing that. I'm actually consulting for retailers to where I'm able to go in and put my magic on it and transform it in a really short amount of time. But I'm not their employee. I'm my own boss. I have my own life. I have freedom and time freedom and everything else. And if I hadn't taken the risk and taken the leap and chosen to live life on my own terms, I would have never been able to follow that dream and chase that dream and check that box off too. And it's so fulfilling. And so I love that story you just shared about him because, yes, I'm so glad he did that and he chose himself. And I think it takes taking the risk, taking the leap, doing the thing. You're not always going to know how you're going to get to your destination, but you have to start, right? I use an
Yeah.
analogy with my clients, if I can share this analogy really quick, of when you are going, let's say you want to drive from California to Maine. You know your destination. You know you want to get to Maine. We tend to say, okay, God, I need to know the whole trip. I need to know where I'm going to get off. I need to know where I'm going to go to lunch. I need to know my bathroom breaks. And God's like, that's not how this works. All you have to do is get in the car and plug in your destination, and you're going to see your next 2 steps. And that's it. And you're not going to know that you're going to stop for lunch in Indiana or get off on exit 56. You just know your next 5 steps. So we need to think about life like that and translate that into our lives of all you have to do is trust that God's got the destination, that you know the destination you're headed for, and you have to stay like this and just focus on your next 5 steps. That's it, not the next 50.
I love that. And you made me think too, when you were talking earlier about when you stepped away from that corporate job and you felt like you lost this identity and everything, all the accomplishments, the awards, the things that kind of keep you trapped in that environment, if you will. Um, that must be how people that retire feel because they lose their sense of identity. So I think you have a whole other either mentorship or revenue stream or opportunity to connect because we're in this stage of like the largest time in history of baby boomers retiring, selling their businesses, and there's this huge gap because think about it, who's going to take over their businesses? Millennials? Like are they really equipped? Do they have the business acumen? Have they got that experience to step in? There's such a huge gap in the marketplace right now on so many levels for business owners who want to sell their companies, for people who want to retire and could actually fund their retirement using their own knowledge by like writing a book, creating a course, becoming a mentor. And you're basically living as an example of somebody who's done these things. And you're showing people, like you said, that map. Like, this is how you do it. And
Yes.
people can follow you because you've done it and you don't want them to make the same mistakes you made. So you're kind of giving them like the fast pass, like the Disneyland fast pass.
I love that so much. Yes, that's the program I'm launching right now is the Epiphany, and it's a 12-month experience to choose your path. Do you want to write your book or launch your podcast or create your coaching business? Whatever your path is, let's do it. I did all of those things in 9 months. I launched a retreat business, launched a podcast, published my journal, and revitalized and rebranded my coaching business all in 9 months. So now, exactly. And I did that coming straight off of my dark night of the soul, straight off of my grief season, jumped into that. So now, whatever transition it is that people are going through, whether it's a new, coming out of divorce or coming out of job loss or coming out of retirement and just wanting to revitalize and reinvent themselves, I'm so here for that. And I can't wait to help so many people reinvent themselves and get their epiphany.
Well, you said that one of the hardest parts of leadership is feeling alone. So why do so many successful women feel isolated at the top?
Wow, yeah. So I think you don't the higher up you go, the less you have camaraderie and peers, and the more you're leading people, but it's not people that you feel like you can really be vulnerable with and be open with. So it's that whole the higher up you go, the less there is around you, and you feel lonely. And so I think that it's so, so critical that people, women in leadership positions, especially high level CEOs, C-suite, have camaraderie, companionship, have peers that they can be vulnerable with and not have to put on a face for, right? And coaches and mentors that can come alongside them and help them because I think the bigger the title, the heavier the weight of carrying that load of showing up a certain way. And the more dangerous it is that you might lose yourself along the way. So I think that making sure that you are staying in alignment with yourself, in alignment with your true identity and your passions is so critical when you get up to the top.
So what does real support actually look like and why is it so rare? Especially for women, I found that so many times when there's a perception that men are holding women back. But the truth is, I find that it's a lot of other women sometimes that make women feel like they don't have that support from women. You know,
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
do you think that why do you think that is so rare to see women supporting each other?
I think it's probably a scarcity mindset. Like, I personally, I've never been without support. I've never been without abundant support and mentorship and people pulling me up the ranks with them. And I think if you have, you're going to attract what you put out. So if you have an abundant mindset that there's more than enough, more than enough of more than enough for all of us, and I personally have always had the mentality of pulling everybody up the ranks with me. If you have that mindset and that energy, you're going to attract that mindset and that energy. But if you have the mindset that there's not enough and it's scarce and you have to fight your way to the top and you have to pull other women down to pull yourself up, you're going to get up there and you're going to be alone because you had to step on other people in order to get to where you were aspiring to be. So I think it really comes down to belief, mindset, and having that complete abundant mindset that there is way like too much to go around.
Well, this is amazing, Anna. Thank you so much for being here. Is there anything else that you want to add today?
Oh my gosh. I think just the knowing that if you have a dream in your heart, if you have something that you want to pursue, that even if you are in your deepest, darkest hour, that I know both of us can relate to having that dark night of the soul where you feel like, did I just blow my whole life up? What did I do? You're going through grief, you're going through loss. Just know that there is hope and that if there is a dream that is in your heart, it was not put there to tease you. It was not put there for any reason other than to empower you and inspire you to chase after it. So if you want to chase after that dream, I would love to come alongside you and support you. And yeah, you can come join me at epiphaniescoaching.com to come find me, and I'd love to connect.
Epiphaniescoaching.com.
Yes.
All right, guys. And you can see that in the show notes below as well. So again, thank you so much for being here. Now I'm going to step into one of my favorite parts of the show is where we get to talk about a mystery guest. And you guys at home can try to guess who we're talking about. And this is about a special female founder. Before her company became one of the most widely used platforms in the world, before millions of entrepreneurs, creators, and businesses relied on it every single day, she was a 19-year-old teaching design classes. What she noticed, it wasn't opportunity at first, it was frustration. Students were struggling, and not because they weren't creative, but because the tools were complicated, clunky, built for experts, not for people. And she had a simple idea. What if design didn't have to be hard? What if anybody could create something beautiful? Now, today, that sounds obvious, but back then it sounded naive. So she took that idea to investors, and guess what? They all said no. Not once, not 10 times, over 100 rejections. The same feedback over and over and over. She heard things like, design software is too complex to disrupt. This is not a venture scale idea. You're too young. You don't understand the industry. They would pat her on the head and say, okay, little girl, good idea, bye. And here's the part that most people miss. It wasn't just rejection, it was dismissal. And I'm sure there's a lot of people, especially women out there, that can resonate with this. It was dismissal of her age, her vision, being a woman, her belief that simplicity could win. And she was tired of building the tables and never getting a seat at the same table that she was building other people's companies and dreams. And at one point, she and her co-founders were literally flying across the world, pitching anybody who would listen, sleeping on couches, taking meetings that went nowhere, even going out to dinner with people who were threatening to fund her company who really just wanted to try to date her. And hearing no so many times, it would have been easy to start shrinking the idea, to make it smaller, safer, more realistic. But that became her defining moment because she had a choice. She adjusted the vision so she could say, okay, I'm going to adjust the vision to fit what people believed, or hold steady with the vision until the world catches up. So she chose to hold it. She didn't simplify the dream. In fact, she doubled down on it. And eventually, somebody said yes. And that yes became Canva, a platform that didn't just compete with design software. It completely changed who design was for, because it wasn't built for designers. It was built for everyone. And today, millions of people who once thought, I'm not creative, are building brands, businesses, and ideas. And in the gig economy, it has employed billions of dollars of freelancers who were able to pay their bills, avoid bankruptcy, help cover medical costs for their people and their families, and has impacted millions of people because one person refused to believe that it had to be complicated. And that is the defining moments of Melanie Perkins, the founder of Canva. And that is what powerful stories are all about. She didn't succeed by becoming more like what the world expected. She succeeded by staying aligned with what she knew in her gut was true. And when no one else could see it yet, Anna, when you made the decision to walk away, when your body was telling you there's more for you, did it feel like you were holding on to something that only you could see before the rest of your life actually caught up with it?
Yes, that story just gave me chills upon chills upon chills. It was so beautiful, and I
Oh,
absolutely felt that way. People were saying midlife crisis, she's having a mental breakdown, and I'm like, no, I know that there's so much beauty on the other side of this, and I know that I am going after a dream that's been planted in my heart for a reason. And along the lines, it got really crazy, but I'm never once have I regretted making that decision.
I love to say, I'm not having a midlife crisis. I'm building a midlife castle.
Yes.
And that's the choice. And if I want glitter and unicorns, I can have it. And and I think that's where we feel like we feel disempowered when we put our power in someone else, whether it's a boss or a relationship or a parent or a partner or somebody that we feel like is letting us down. And when we understand that we are responsible for our own happiness and our own choices, and everyone else is just along for that ride, then it empowers us to make better decisions and really be able to listen to our bodies and let them guide us into these right decisions that turn everything around. So, Anna, I am so grateful that you had your own defining moment. And thank you for coming here today to share it. And we honor your dad, your mom, your brother, and all that you stand for and all that you have created from taking your own personal pain and creating purpose, not just in your life, but for so many of the people that you are impacting and helping them make changes. And the ripple effect and butterfly effect of that is so beautiful. So we appreciate you. God bless you. And thank you again for being here. And thank you all for watching today. I hope you feel inspired. I'm still getting goosebumps. And will you please do us a favor and hit that subscribe button, share this channel with other people. And this helps us maintain this as a free show so that we can continue to inspire people and get more guests on like Anna that have incredible stories to share of hope and inspiration. So again, thank you all for being here and we'll see you next time. All right. Take care, everyone. Thanks, Anna.
Thanks for listening to the Defining Moments podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.